Hello everyone, this is Tanya Singer. For my unit redesign project, I am using my math curriculum series, Investigations by Pearson Education. This is my table of contents. My unit redesign will focus on Unit 4, Investigation 1, Sessions 1.1 through 1.5. The focus within this investigation is measurement and counting. The benchmarks for the lesson in my project is for students to be able to measure the length of an object by lining up multiple units. I have listed the state content standards pertaining to the lessons here and within each lesson. I have also included the math focus points for each of my lessons. Here is my pre-assessment. Unit 4 Investigation 1 is the first time my kindergartners learn about measuring in our math series. My students will complete the longer page first and then the shorter page right after. Directions will be given verbally to all students. I have a speaker system in my classroom to ensure my voice is clearly heard. This pre-assessment will give me an idea regarding my students' concept of the words longer and shorter. Lesson 1 begins with the introduction of key vocabulary words that they will hear in the story that I am reading. The story I'm reading is Shoes, Shoes, Shoes by Anne Morris. After reading the story, I would lead a class discussion about the length of a shoe and would explain that they will measure the length of their shoe the same way they do in shoe stores, from heel to toe. The purpose of this lesson is to allow students to explore the measurement of length in their own way. The accommodation I made for this lesson was to pre-teach key vocabulary and integrate real-life images representing those key vocabulary words that were in the story before I read the story to the students. So as you can see, I have the posters. These would be 8 by 11 type posters that I would have out. In Lesson 2, the students will then work with a partner to trace each other's shoe onto a piece of construction paper and then add it to the pile of other shoe outlines. Students then choose a shoe outline to measure. They measure the shoe from heel to toe using connecting cubes and then record their findings on their recording sheet. The first accommodation I made to this lesson was to meet with my ELLs and students with disabilities to discuss and practice using comparative words such as longer and shorter and superlatives such as longest and shortest. I also worked with those students to arrange a set of shoes by size, demonstrating the use of the words listed above. The second accommodation I made was to the recording sheet. I created a more organized worksheet with dark-lined boxes that will help all my students with the multi-step directions for completion. My students can clearly see the 3 spaces in which I want them to record the name on the shoe outline and how long the shoe is. We talk about using drawings, numbers, to record how long. So I also made a third accommodation to the worksheet by adding a cube train for those students who struggle to draw. They can focus on counting and not drawing. Prior to beginning Lesson 3, I have put 2 strips of masking tape, one labeled A and the other labeled B, on my table. Strip A is exactly 5 craft sticks long and strip B is 3.5 craft sticks long. To begin the lesson, I gather the children around the table and ask them how we could use the craft sticks to measure the length of strip A and find out how long it is. I have students demonstrate their ideas, and then I gather a few ideas about how to record the finding on the worksheet. As they complete the lesson, I have other tape strips around the classroom that they will measure and record. The first accommodation I made in order to differentiate this lesson was to meet with a small group of students who did not quite yet understand what it means to measure something with multiple units. The second accommodation I made to this lesson was to format the recording sheet. The third accommodation I made was again to the recording sheet, but this time I labeled it with specific tape strip labels. This accommodation is for my students who have difficulty counting larger numbers. This way they are able to measure strips of tape that equal a number of sticks that they can successfully line up and count. During this session, students continue to measure and record the friends' shoe outlines with connecting cubes and the labeled tape strips with craft sticks. The accommodations I made to this lesson were for my students that had completed each of the activities. For those students who were done measuring shoes, their challenge was to make a list of shoes from shortest to longest. For those students who had measured all of the tape strips, their challenge was to measure the tape strips with a tool that was a bit longer, such as an unsharpened pencil, or with a tool that is a bit shorter, such as a short straw. For Lesson 5, students will be measuring a collection of objects. The objects range in length from 2 to 15 inches. The objects are labeled, and students will use connecting cubes to measure the length of the object and then record the length using numbers, pictures, and/or words on their recording sheet, as we have before. The first accommodation I made was to the recording worksheet. I created a more organized worksheet with dark-lined boxes that will help my students with multi-step directions for completion. The second accommodation I made was to provide a collection of items that were shorter in length for my ELLs and students with disabilities who may struggle to count up to 20 cubes. By providing a collection of items shorter in length, those students are receiving support and feel success at their current level of learning. Throughout each lesson, I formatively assess through observation. The investigations curriculum provides an observation assessment checklist that I make notes on regarding my observations of students, how students are measuring length, such as if they're lining the craft sticks or cubes up with the length of the object, and if they are accurately counting the number of units. Summatively, at the end of Unit 4, I will conduct end-of-unit assessment interviews with the students that I have identified as having difficulty measuring the length of an object by lining up multiple units. So I would have these students, I would give them a shoe outline and a container of cubes, and I would ask them to show me how they would use the cubes to measure the length of the object. And then I would note again whether the students are able to measure the length, line up the cubes with the edge of the shoe outline, and if they keep it straight, and if they're able to count the units. The curriculum does provide an interactive whiteboard component, but I usually only use it when introducing the math workshop lessons. I did find free online computer games that I can supplement during our computer lab time. The two websites I liked the most were splashmath.com and pbskids.org. I have not had a chance to try out the games with my class yet because of the Smarter Balance testing right now in the computer lab, but I did try the Down the Tubes game you see at the top of the screen at home, and I think my kids will love it. I have included the web addresses if you'd like to check them out. Here is my reference page and my summary and reflection. In my summary, I reflect on each lesson. I have tweaked these lessons over the last couple of years to accommodate my classroom environment and the range of learners that I continue to see each year. First and foremost, the students come first, so if I see something not working, I will tweak it to fit their learning needs. And that is my unit redesign. Thank you for listening.